Your previous record was only released about a year ago. So had songs already been written when you released that album?
Well, when I basically finished Strife Forever about a year and a half before it actually came out.
Okay.
In that year and a half, I did remix it and it got remastered and to make it sound better for being released on CD or on vinyl or on digital. But mainly I'd finished all the recording for it, so there wasn't much work left to do on that. So in that year and a half, I started to create the next album straight away, and just little ideas from that every now and then. I mean, I remember I finished the Juddering, the first track from it, pretty soon after I'd finished Strife Forever. And then the last track on the album also was the next thing I finished. So I had the bookends of it for a while. So it took about 2 years to make Culture Volume. And in that time, Strife Forever was released about halfway through the process. So there's a lot of crossover. But they feel like very separate records to me, made in very different times and places.
In what way then? Because as I say, it is quite, you kind of wrote those songs in a sequence in 2 years or so. So was there a lot of influence from the previous record, from that kind of sounds that you hear?
Some of the sounds were, there was a bit of a follow-on. I knew that Strife Forever made a good blueprint for whatever was the next record was going to be like, because I knew that I wanted, I thought initially that it was going to be, the new album was going to be totally instrumental, no vocals on it. I have no idea why, but that was just the way I saw it going at the time. And then as I started playing live more, I noticed that I enjoyed singing more, and that the act of singing was one of my strengths. And so I wanted to, and after a while I decided, okay, the new album's definitely going to be a more vocal based album. But it set a good blueprint in that there's so many different styles on both records. So, and I feel like Culture Volume, it goes to more extremes. So the dance side, the more dance floor side of what I was doing on Top of Strife Forever is more dancey on this next album, and the poppy stuff is more poppy. And,
right.
So I wanted it to be a progression, but not explore some of the same territory, but just stronger and go at it a bit harder.
And in terms of content then, what was it also, because they were written so closely together that themes overlapped?
No, I feel that the times are very separate, because I moved to London properly when I started making Culture Volume, whereas Strife Forever I hadn't really made much in London on.
Okay.
I was living in one like suburb in like down in the south in Southampton where I was living at the time, on the coast. So that was like the place that I associate that album with, whereas Culture Volume feels like the London album made entirely in London, and that's why it has like a fuller sound to it, and it's sort of busier, and the environment really influences what I do a lot.
Can you give, in what way can you give me?
Just I think like just the environment is one of my biggest influences, that a non-musical one, but it just affects the way how you interact with your environment ends up coming out in your art quite a lot. So when I was in the suburbs and I was more isolated, the sound of Strife Forever was more, it seems like it's only just sort of, for me anyway, it's very personal and sort of inward looking, because that was the feeling of the time, and that was the environment around me. I didn't have many friends there at that time. I wasn't very social being. Whereas with Culture Volume, I was in London, and everything started to be more out of an outpouring, and I was making lots of friends and had a big scene there, and it's hard to feel lonely in London, I guess, because there's so many people and it's busy. So the new record felt like it was more outward looking rather than inward looking. So that's how the environment sort of affects those things.
In a similar sense, then, was the fact that so you told Strife Forever was received quite well, was that a factor then as well, because that opened up a lot of doors? And
yeah, absolutely. Like the getting nominated for the Mercury Prize, all of a sudden, this little thing that I'd made at home, in my bedroom, was now on this worldwide stage. You know, they're giving quite big mainstream attention, which I never thought was going to happen with this project. I always thought it was going to be more of an experimental side project sort of thing, and not really something that was going to be given a lot of mainstream attention. So when it was well received, you kind of, it makes you, I don't know, it's quite an addictive thing. You want to keep it rolling. And the way I sought to do that was to make more of a pop focused album with what I was doing. But it felt totally natural the same. It wasn't to sort of capitalise on the success, but it just felt like the natural thing to do. And anyway, I'd already pretty much finished Culture Volume before the Mercury Prize was announced anyway, so whatever happened.
You also mentioned that it took quite a while and this kind of ties in with that it took you quite a while to finish certain songs, so that you'd leave them and then come back to them later. As a producer, have you figured out when a song is finished for you?
It's really difficult, and that's one of the hardest things to realise, because, a song like End Result or Hearts That Never take 2 years to make. And I know some people are very quick when they're in the studio, and I've been in the studio with some people where they're like, right, we're going to do this now, and I've got this idea, and I'm very slow with how I work, and it's you just kind of, you listen to what you've done every day, and just listening to it will help the ideas sort of ferment in your mind, and you just slowly work out, what does this need, what's it missing here, and it could take weeks sometimes to figure that out. But when you do, you hit upon it, and I don't know, it's just like, it's hard to say when you feel like something's finished. You could work on it forever. I think one of the most important lessons I've learned over the last, however 10 years of me making music, was when I read a quote from Leonardo da Vinci, was that his quote was, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." And reading that when I was 15 or whatever, I was like, wow, that's a really powerful idea. It's you don't finish anything. You have to let something go. You have to let it go at some point.
Right.
And it's just whatever that point of abandonment is. That's when it's done. That's when you can't work on it anymore because you've abandoned it. It's never finished, but only abandoned. So that was a really important lesson to learn, and that's just how I feel about everything now. So I never worry too much about, is it done yet, or you just know. It's something inside your head. You just know. It's hard to describe it, but it's something you're aware of.
And when it comes to the title culture of Volume, does it pop up as naturally as finishing a song?
No, the title for this record is from a poem by a poet called Rick Holland. Rick Holland did a collaboration album with Brian Eno back in 2011 called Drums Between the Bells, and it was all based on Rick's words. And I was really drawn to Rick's poetry because I bought one of his books, and he self-publishes all his stuff, so he's only got one book anyway. I bought this book, it's quite a short book, and one of the poems in there called Monument had the words Culture Volume at the end of one of the lines. And I'd got to know Rick a bit through mutual friends and stuff, so I asked him if he minded me using it as an album title because it seemed so perfectly to fit in with the sound and the atmosphere of the album. I guess there's so many different interpretations of the meaning of it. My kind of interpretation I keep coming back to is that almost as like the Culture Volume is sort of the life I've been living for the last 2 years in London on tour, and how my life has changed in that time, and it involves all of the places I've been to and all the people I've met in that time, and just all the influences and bands that I've toured with in that period. And it's all based around a musical sense of the word volume, sort of fits in with that. But there's lots of different ways of reading it. It just seems to fit really well with the sound of the themes of the album.
Do you recall what initially attracted you to that those couple of words that? It just struck me. When you read something and you see something and it just immediately it creates images in your mind. And that's what I'm trying really hard to do with my music. That's more important to me than anything. Maybe more so than making people feel emotion.
but to conjure up images in the mind is to be evocative and be evocative with your music is more important to me at first, and then the emotion comes after that. When you realise, okay, this music makes me feel like I'm in this space and it's this time of day and it's this temperature and I'm in this part of the world or something like that, then you kind of ascribe the emotion to it afterwards. How do I feel about being in this place at that time? That's really important to me. So yeah, reading that line had the same effect on me.
Okay. And is there then this feeling that you described? Is there maybe one song that for you kind of sticks out on the record that kind of gives you this feeling? That evokes a certain...
Yeah, Carousel does. Yeah, Carousel's it's the most sort of meditative, slow track. You know, it's kind of most obviously the most emotional song to me, at least on the album, and it's the lyrics, especially. I think finishing the lyrics to that made me realise that's the way I work. You're just painting with words, really. There's I can't really tell you what that song's about or who it's about or what time it was, but it seems to me so perfectly sums up something I had in mind when I was making the music to it, and that's yeah. I mean, it's beyond me to really describe to you what the images evoke for me, because I just feel like that ruins the process for other people. I'm more interested in what you think about that, for instance, or what comes to the mind of the listener, really.
Do you, in that sense, and then for the album as a whole, have a certain idea, or that doesn't sound right, but something that you want people to take away from it? Or is it totally up to them?
It's up to them, yeah. I make the music to fulfill my need to express myself, and however the audience interact with it themselves, or however they feel like they express themselves with it is fine by me. And it's really hard to have just one hold on people when you're going from an ambient piece to a dance, more four to the floor dance track, and more of a pop song. And you know, when there's no specific style over the whole record, there's no way you can make people feel a certain way. It's just however they interact with that certain style.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.